If you think that human communication is just the words that we speak, you are missing an entire dimension, I would argue many dimensions, of the reality that you're actually sharing with someone when you're in conversation with them. The way that we actually communicate as humans is through sharing our versions of reality. And of course, part of this sharing is done through language, and language is also the only way of communication that most of us know how to recognize and validate. But beyond the language of how we share realities with one another, we are sharing what we believe is possible. And this happens at an energetic level, it happens at a non-verbal level. So when you are in relationship to someone, you're not just sharing an experience with them, you are sharing a collective vibrational field. You are meeting each other halfway in what you believe is possible and in what the other person believes is possible. And the reason it's so important to understand this is because if you don't know that this is happening, you will take on other people's versions of reality, of what they believe is real, and make it yours. Sensitive people are doing this all the time because although we may not have language to describe this, we learned from a very young age that our version of reality, the way we perceive things at a nonverbal level, is very different than what most people are in agreement to. And so we learned to take on the version of reality that is sold to us through language, through marketing, through propaganda, through societal norms, through religious conditioning. We learned to take on those versions of reality and become them because the version of reality that we actually experience is not widely accepted. And I would go as far as to argue that the version of reality that highly sensitive people are experiencing before they condition themselves out of it is reality. And one of, if not the greatest problem on this planet right now, is that we are capable of creating so many different versions of reality that there's chaos because we don't know how to bring our collective realities together. And beyond that, we also don't know how to hold multiple realities at once, how to let our reality exist without needing to go into competition with or control of the other version, someone else's version of reality that does not totally match up with ours. And so, in the space between what your reality is and what someone else's version of reality is where we tend to decide how we want to relate to other humans. If someone else's version of reality is too far from what is comfortable for us, then we often will choose not to relate. Sometimes we'll choose to go into conflict with this person. But in order for healing to happen on this planet, we have to understand this energy here, this space between what is my version of reality and what is this person's version of reality. I think ideally we learn to share realities with the people who we are most in resonance with, and that informs where you're meant to be giving your attention and energy. Not that we're always supposed to be in resonance, but resonance is the possibility of human existence. And right now we're very conditioned to believe that dissonance and conflict are the norm. So for most people who have not done healing work, chaos becomes a place where they can thrive because that's what we learned to register as safety in our reality. Your reality is layers and layers and layers of what you believe is possible. And your reality is also highly adaptable and capable of changing. This is why for highly sensitive people, when you meet someone and you want to build a reality with them, it's very easy to become a new version of self to make those realities match. Is that sustainable? Most often, no. So what we need to actually be able to do is register our reality, hold our reality, which is a daily practice of coming more and more into what is real. This physical dimension is what is real, and how you feel about this physical dimension is what is real. We are very conditioned to be in the mind. The mind is not real. The mind is capable of creating things if we focus our attention there for long enough, which is why we are conditioned out of what is real. Our physical surroundings and our felt sense in relationship to our physical surroundings is what I would assess as reality. That's what's in the present moment. It's also the currency, the energy that you are capable of working with and changing is what is real, what is here in reality. When you can establish yourself in your reality so fully that you find safety here, you create a version of reality that allows you to be who you are here. That's what I'm defining as safety. When you do this, and you start to attract people into the grounded reality that you have created for yourself, where you get to be who you are, from that place, you can find how does their version of reality harmonize or not harmonize with mine. And again, we're not always going for harmony, but we are looking for the possibility of creating community that is built on resonance and harmony. Because this is just a theory, but I believe that everyone has a community in which they can harmonize. And when we have communities that are harmonized, we can all create realities that work for us. It's not about one same reality. And this is where human consciousness, I think, has really fallen into a trap here of thinking that the reality, the version of reality that works for one person is the version of reality that needs to work for everyone. And so people go to war for their versions of reality when it's not the point. Conflicting realities are not a problem. It's just a recognition of the lack of harmony. And if we can hold a lack of harmony while also working towards resonance, we can find the resonant realities that are meant to come together and create larger dimensions, communities. And those don't necessarily need to be in conflict with one another. They all play different roles. They all have different areas of expertise where the passion in that resonant reality is a particular focus, perhaps. Again, this is just a theory. This is just a dream of what the world might look like if we understood the importance of first finding our own personal relationship with reality, but then also the ability to harmonize our versions of reality with other people, which is not forcing our reality onto them. It's not needing them to agree to what we find as reality. It's more often, in my experience, being able to hold your version of reality while also honoring and valuing their version of reality. And then the people who are meant to be closest to you are going to have a very similar version of reality to the one that you hold as true, which you will know it is true because your version of reality creates safety in your nervous system. When you are actually on a mental, emotional, physical level, anchored in what is real for you, anchored in what is reality, which is much more simple than most of the things that we put our attention into, your nervous system registers that as safety. And so we can build from this foundation of what is reality, we can build communities and connections in safety, in the ability to be safe on this planet. And that doesn't mean that nothing bad ever happens, but it does mean that we don't have to create from a baseline of stress, because that is what's happening right now. There are too many dissonant realities, and there are too many people who have been conditioned to believe that their version of safety is being able to imprint or force a particular version of reality onto everyone else. True healing will happen on this planet. Of course, again, this is just a theory, this is just an idea, but I think true healing will happen on this planet when there is permission for everyone to have what their reality is, and when we know how to collaborate in our realities, which sometimes means we harmonize with people. We're all at different notes, and those notes blend together well. Or sometimes there's true resonance, where your reality is a match with the version of reality that someone else has. And those are the connections where we find our safety. where we learn to create safety together. And I do believe that the more time you spend with someone, the more resonant you become with them. And if that's not the case, that is something I would deeply question, because there may be a level of resistance on both parties' parts to either coming into reality. So maybe there's not resonance because one or both parties resist what reality is, resist being in reality. Or if you come into reality and you're still not resonant with someone, if you find safety within yourself and you recognize that the resonance with this person, the ability to harmonize with this person, does not exist, that may be an indication that the connection is not one that is meant to continue in this lifetime. It's one that has been attracted from past karma, another lifetime, other dimensions, whatever your relationship and idea of the vastness of human consciousness is. So now the question is, how do we find reality? It's the biggest question because there are so many systems in this world at this point that seek to pull us away from reality, that desire to condition us out of our ability to find reality. Even as I speak to it, the energies don't really want to be spoken about. There's a lot of control and fear around our ability to actually be in reality. And so that means in order to find reality, you're going to have to move through the fear and control, which is the value of clairvoyant work, because clairvoyance is how I've personally found a relationship with reality, with what is real. When you can see an energy, clairvoyance is just the ability to look at the energy that you are relating to, because to go back to the beginning of the video, when you're relating to other humans, you're sharing your versions of reality, and we could say you're sharing your pictures of what is possible. You're sharing an image of what you believe to be true, what you believe reality to be. Because most people are not consciously living outside of reality, living in their minds. It's the way that we're taught to relate to this dimension. Clairvoyance allows you to find reality because if you can see the energy that you are currently functioning through, you are in reality. And also, if you can see energy, you can see where the different energy levels that you are navigating in your life are not in reality. Because the more that you practice clairvoyance, the more that you practice the ability to see clearly for yourself, which is clairvoyance, and to see clearly for yourself is to be in relationship with your reality. Your reality is what creates a felt sense of safety and connection in your body. So being grounded in your reality makes your body feel safe. When you practice, when you have a practice of clairvoyance, of coming into reality, of finding reality, when you practice this, what ends up happening is you start to see when you are not in relationship with reality. And then there's a journey that you go on, because once you see that, you really start to question, why have I taken on so many different versions of what the world has told me is real? And the answer is because that's what we're taught to do. We're not taught to see the world the way that we see it. We're taught to see the world the way that the group sees it, because that is, up until now, how we have created a sense of belonging, a sense of relationality, especially if you identify as someone who is highly sensitive, especially if you're a person who has a lived experience on this planet of feeling like you don't belong, feeling like you don't fit in, feeling like maybe even who you are is wrong. You feel that because you're aware that you're not in reality. You're aware that the group you're in, the community you're in, is not in reality. And so you feel like something's wrong because it is. Because we're here to be in reality. And I can't tell you what you'll find when you come into reality, because it's a very personal experience of recognizing what is true for you, of recognizing what perspective, what dimension of reality allows you to feel safe and connected to yourself. And again, it is a deconditioning process because there's societal conditioning, there is religious conditioning, there is ancestral programming. There are layers and layers and layers that we move through, and that may sound overwhelming when I put it that way. It's what you're here to do. You're here to come into reality, and that can be a really painful process, but it can also be one that is fun and enjoyable when you know how to be in communication with the universe, with the language of energy, which is just the language of the universe. It's the language that the plants speak. It's the language that the trees speak. It's the language that the animals speak. So if you've ever felt like nature makes more sense to you, like the animal realm makes more sense to you, it's because you are seeking a right relationship with reality. You're seeking, you're on a path in this lifetime of trying to find what is reality for me. And so you recognize, you have that resonance with the natural realm because that is closer to reality for you than what the humans are doing. Because what the humans have been doing for centuries is not reality. In fact, I would argue that many humans have been rewriting reality for quite some time. And that's why there's so much dissonance. That's why there's so much chaos. Because on a very psychic level, the ability to find reality is challenged by the lack of truth that exists on this planet, the lack of information that we have about what has actually happened here. We have access to such a small amount of information that is by design to paint a particular version of reality. And you know that it's not actually reality, which is why you have such a hard time harmonizing with the life that you experience, because on a deeply psychic, energetic level, you know that it's not true. Your body is deeply intelligent. It registers that lack of truth as lack of safety. So to develop your clairvoyance is to develop the skill of clearing out the layers of energy that limit you from finding the truest relationship to the reality that you're experiencing right now. The more that you cultivate being in reality right now, being willing to see whatever is showing up in your reality, the more that you can harmonize with what you experience, the more that you can be in resonance with the communities and the places that you, my dog's dreaming, and the places that you share your energy. And the more that you seek resonance, the more that you're going to put your energy towards the things that your energy actually wants to be a part of. And that's how we create. And again, resonance and harmony as an ultimate are not the goal. Dissonance and contrast are also important. Conflict is, especially with where we're at right now as a human collective, conflict is going to be a part of working towards a more healed version of reality where we can come together with people who share a collective version of reality that is very close to ours. And then we have these groups creating in reality. Right now, something very different is happening. Not enough of us are able to harmonize and resonate with each other in this way to pull the creative attention and energy into new realities. Right now, everything is blown out into chaos because no one knows how to direct their energy and attention. And beyond that, because we've been so conditioned to give up our versions of reality in exchange for the versions of reality that other people want us to see so that we can hopefully attain or receive the love that we never got. The love comes from within you when you find reality. And then you can attract more people who have love to give and hold and resonate in. And you resonate in love together. asking this question, what is reality for me? What is true in reality? Is one of the greatest healing methods that you can have on a daily basis. What's reality for me today? And you can also come into my clairvoyant training and learn to see energy psychically, which I don't like the term shortcut, but it is going to be a quicker pathway to learning to work with your relationship to reality, to learning to recognize that the way that you have communicated with nature and resonated with nature and the animal realm, I keep referencing down here because my dog's down here. When you work with your clairvoyance, when you work with your psychic abilities, you recognize that that resonance was very divinely designed, and beyond that, you can begin to work with the natural realm to show you how to develop your psychic abilities. That's what we're going to be doing in my 9-week program, Resonance. So if you're ready to develop the skill of finding reality in community, check out Resonance. Otherwise, keep asking yourself this question: what is reality? Keep rooting yourself into the permission to find reality, and then let your version of reality, your version of what is true, which creates a felt sense of safety in your body, let your version of reality show you where your energy is meant to go. Because the way that you have sacrificed your version of reality to take on other versions of reality, so that you'll belong, so that you can fit in, so that you can relate to people, that dynamic is an agreement that you've made to value other people's energy and what they want from you more than you value yourself and your own energy and your ability to create who you came to be in this lifetime. So start valuing your reality. And be gentle with yourself, because I think in teachings like this, there is often a level of religious conditioning that will activate, because now I've given you a way to heal, and it becomes dogmatic because that is what most of us have been conditioned within as a society. Even if you weren't raised in religion, these healing doctrines can become very black and white, and that is not reality. Reality is that everything exists. We're just tuning into a particular dimension. So one day your version of reality may look very different than the next. And it's not about holding yourself to some perfect version of what reality is for you. It's about being open to let reality communicate with you, to let the energy of life flow through you, to be open to the way that the universe leads you and guides you, even if it looks completely different than the day before, even if from one day to the next, it means your whole belief system has to change, because your belief system is not the point. Your experience is the point. What you feel in relationship to reality is the point. And in my experience, the more that you practice reality, the more that your relationship to reality, when you're truly in your own energy, becomes a peacefulness. I talk about it often as still waters. A relationship with reality where you can recognize the disturbances as they ripple through your energy field. And again, it's not about being perfect, but I do see very often that when people find reality, what they experience is peace, stillness, ease. And it's still okay to go through the waves of emotions. We're not trying to avoid those. We're building a relationship with life where when we go through those waves of emotions, whatever they are, we can return to reality, because often those waves of emotions are threads that connect us to so many more dimensions than we can ever consciously be capable of perceiving. And that's what's really cool about being in these human bodies. We're in a limited perspective of reality. So when we experience those extreme emotions, we're often getting pulled into way more of a perspective than we are actually capable of consciously processing. Clairvoyance will help with this because then you can see, you can start to look at all the different dimensions of where your energy is going when there's a heightened emotion. And you can move through it and you can live your life. But often the return to reality is the return to peace.